What happens for you when you are pulled into leadership and you're successful but it's so far away that you lose yourself, that you've sacrificed yourself in order to be successful? And my question is that really success? And on the Joyosity podcast, what we are doing with this mini series is talking about how do we bring these concepts of joy, these big questions that we have about the practice of leadership and joy, into your everyday life, because we need it to make sense to where you are and what you're doing today. Because leadership and joy don't fall apart usually in the big moments. It's when the quiet little erosion over time, when there are unmet or misaligned expectations, or the unspoken belief that you're supposed to have it figured out by now and it's supposed to feel a certain way. And I think then those moments are where we really decide who we are as a leader. And I think in those moments is where joy is the most misunderstood. And on the Joyosity podcast, we are bringing leaders together to talk about what real joy is in everyday practice. That joy is different than optimism. Joy isn't happy. Joy absolutely is not toxic positivity. And it's not a reward if you do well. So joy and the work of Joyosity is a practice, the one that we as leaders return to even when the pressure is high or intense and the stakes are high, and that old way of sacrifice and pushing harder and hustling just isn't working anymore. So in this mini series, what I'm doing is talking with real leaders who have, in their way and in their expertise, brought those theories into lived experience of everyday life. And I am Jen Whitmer, your host. I am a keynote speaker and award-winning author, all around joy bringer. And I am excited to have these conversations because they're real leaders who have lived this. They've experienced the very real tensions that you face as well. And all of these very real moments, we're staying human and bringing joy into the center of what we do is the success. It is the key leadership move. And I am really excited to bring you to Karen Ansen today. So I want you to meet her. I'm really excited about it because she really speaks to the inner world of leadership, where I think she has a rare voice, a clarity and a courage to bring into this conversation that we've been having over the last few weeks. She works with leaders who are carrying a lot and who are really helping them to stay grounded and present and human without sacrificing themselves and without sacrificing effectiveness. And so my hope for you today is to open yourself up. And my invitation is to allow this conversation to let you breathe a little and to be a mirror for you to help you figure out how to do that for yourself. What does it look like to be courageous, to stay yourself, to stay and be that effective leader? So I'm very excited because Karen is principal of Ignite HR in employment law. She has so much experience, and I'm just going to bring her on because I'm so excited for you to meet her. So let's welcome Karen.
Thank you so much. That was beautiful, Jen. I'm so equally excited to actually speak to you today. And thank you for allowing with the time difference.
Absolutely. If you have not identified Karen's accent, Karen is in Australia, north of Sydney. And so I think, are we 11 hours? Are we 13? I couldn't remember. 13 maybe?
9.
9?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. So in our practice here at Joyosity, I really love for you to just tell us how you got to be here doing what you're doing in the world. What is your story? And tell us a little bit about who you are and how you've arrived in this space.
Well, it's been a long one. I started my career, I guess. One of the interesting things about my history is that my siblings were quite bright at school, and I probably wasn't that child that was considered the most bright child in the world. And I remember my mum saying to me when I was finishing high school, "Oh, you better do something practical because you're probably you're not going to be a university student or anything like that." And it didn't really occur to me at the time to question that. I just kind of I thought, well, in those days, it was 1983, I think, and most women either were teachers or they did office work or they did nursing or they did, there was very few. I didn't ever recall any of my colleagues or any of my contemporaries going to university and doing law or anything like that. Some of them went into accounting and things like that, but even most lawyers did conveyancing, which is the house stuff. So so it was quite interesting. But I was the worst secretary. I went to secretarial court and was the worst secretary on the planet.
Listen, it's good to find out what you're not good at.
The funny part of it is that I realized that I've always been a leader. I've always been an unofficial leader before I had the title of leader.
Mm-hmm.
And, I have a very strong personality. I have a big personality. I bring a lot of energy. And I think I've always been a seeker of what you talk about, joy, and what brings you joy. And definitely what has been through, I've been through a lot of dark times in terms of my own personal journey, finding out who I was, finding out my strengths, and and eventually coming to this point where I've been able to bring all of the lessons that I've learned with education together, and then finding, for me, it's been also undoing a lot of the patterns that I was running from childhood, the subconscious stuff you don't even know you're doing, and realizing why I reacted to things and perhaps didn't always put myself first, and that kind of thing, and really having a clear voice now to be able to give people a voice as well, to be able to I guess have a safe place when they need to be able to unpack whatever it is that's going on for them, as well as be a very strong voice for people in that legal space.
Mm-hmm.
If that all makes sense.
I think so. I mean, I just think it's a lovely story. Especially, I don't have a ton of Gen Zers other than my kids' friends who listen to Joyosity, but I do have a lot of parents of those people. And I think it's great to hear that you can still be incredibly successful if you're not the top of your class. I think there's so much pressure for that we all learn in different ways in a different pace. And there is a lot of life and success ahead, even if, you got the C at that place. And the power I hear in your story is understanding who you are and that what you bring. Because if Jen Whitmer tried to pretend she was going to bring any kind of like accounting, organizational spreadsheet skill to something, everybody would fail. Like that would not be good. It would not be good. Not that I don't organize, but it's not in that way. That's not how my brain does it. And it would be foolish to try and do that in that way. And you have, in your story, shared that with us, like understanding who you are, and that I had a big personality. I have led before I had titles. I wasn't planning on asking this question, but your story brings this up for me. And I think because I recognize this in myself, where that idea of the big personality, the lot of energy, especially as a woman, and I think for you in possibly a male-dominated industry in law, how did you cope, manage that idea? Was that ever put to you as a negative? And then if it was, how did you work through that?
That's a really interesting question, because when I first, because I didn't do law till I was in my 40s, so I've really only been practicing 11 years, but it was, originally, of course, I thought, law, I might be able to make some money out of this. That'd be amazing. And, and really, I guess for me, the attractiveness at the time a little bit was the title as well. The idea that,
Mhm.
I would be somebody in the eyes of
Mhm.
whoever. I don't know who I was trying to impress. But anyway, but it was at first, absolutely. I did find myself very lost and was trying to be something or someone that I thought was the vision of me as a lawyer. And,
Mm.
and I realized really early that my strength is actually in my personality, but also in the lessons that I've learned.
Yeah.
And, at university, there was a lot of younger people who, I mean, to do law, it'd be the same in the US. You have to get the top mark,
Mhm.
to be able to even be accepted. So a lot of the kids that get accepted when they're young, straight into university, they are the most intelligent usually, and they're very driven, and they are, but unfortunately, they don't have the life experience, and they actually don't know who they are a lot of the time.
Mhm.
They're still finding that out through the process of education, life skills, when you first start work, all of the things that bring you into to the fullness of who you are, right? And so it was funny because when I was doing my practical legal certificate, I went on site for 3 days, and we did, and there was a group of us who were the older lawyers, and they put us together against all the young ones, and it was so funny. There was some competition that we had to run, and we brought a very holistic approach to the problem. And it was quite interesting. There was a big disparity between the way that we handled the matter, because we considered the people, the history, the whole problem, rather than the legal problem, and
Mm.
try to find a solution. And it was really obvious to me that that was a strength. Um,
Yes.
all of the people that I did law with, most of them don't practice because it's a very tough industry for women.
Mhm.
Um, I've watched them, use their law degree in other ways, but I'm the only one that I know out of the contemporaries that I went to university with that is a principal of their own law practice and has been operating for as long as I have, and has a very successful business. But that has come at a lot of work on myself, and getting
Mhm.
getting over, even just the things about, and this will be, a lot of people will relate to this, is that I know how to do my job very well, but I struggle with knowing my value
Mm.
in terms of the invoicing stuff.
Oh my
If
gosh.
someone questioned my invoices, I fly into an instant panic. Oh my God, I've overcharged them. I mean, or something, have I made a
Mhm.
mistake? I mean, I still do that today. I got one
Yeah.
a few days ago, and I thought, what are you doing? You didn't overcharge them. You are very diligent with your bill.
Mhm.
So why it's still, there's still something in there
Yeah.
somewhere that makes me question myself all the time.
Well, I think that is well, in some ways, it shows that A, you're human, and B, not a narcissist. There's a
Correct.
component of that like
Yeah.
we need a little bit of that inner critic, but I think we need to know how to manage it. My friend Judy Holler is a fellow keynote speaker and author, and she talks about when that voice comes, you're like, oh, you're right on time. Means I'm doing something right. I got to listen to you. Okay, thank you. and
Mhm.
But that right on time, and that I think whenever we're growing or we have to face a situation that's going to occur, and that just means you're normal. It doesn't
Yeah.
mean there's something wrong with you. And I think that's what's so powerful about the work that you do, is this idea in a space, particularly in law, but in so many high stakes environments, where it's just go and do, rather than this blend that you have of the inner work, the idea of presence
Yeah.
being valuable,
Mm.
not just monetarily, but just to who we are holistically. Again, back to that
Yeah.
example. And I think it's a story that a lot of leaders hear and believe at times that presence and mindfulness of that, of understanding who you are, is really just a luxury. It's kind of extra. I got to know how to do the stuff, and then I'll figure out this whole presence, mindfulness stuff. What do you think that costs leaders when presence is really missing and that self-awareness and mindfulness is missing? What is that costing us as a leader?
I think what happens to people is that they operate from exactly that place I was talking about, where they're not bringing their whole selves to the table, because
Mhm.
it's not important to a lot of people. The most important thing is to make money and to be well to be really good at your job. But the problem is, if there's a piece missing, that authenticity piece, that as you said, that presence, and you're literally walking through life without understanding what's actually going on. You get to the end of the day and there's no mindfulness. There's no, oh God, what happened? How was that day today? Oh my God, And the thing is, if you're in the moment and you are present and you are mindful and you are authentic in every moment, and you know what? A lot of the time, it's really interesting. I'll walk into a very difficult legal situation, and I often say to people, "I'm actually really nervous about this today." You
Mm.
know, because what I've read about this has really got off track,
Mhm.
and these are the things that I see are the problems that we need to face today. But what I'm going to ask you right now is if I can give you my promise that I will be here listening and present, and I'll be able to unpack my role here for you, but allow you the opportunity to also do the same thing. So let's just get the guard down. Let's start from scratch. Because people come with all of that other stuff I was talking about. They often
Oh,
start legal problems because they're operating from old patterns. They're operating from fear.
yep.
There's blame that they want. I mean, it's very hard sometimes to shift people because these things go on for years. And
Oh, deep.
what I bring to the table, and this is what I'm known for by boards and big companies. Karen is the problem solver. I very rarely litigate in terms of
Mm.
what I had to do one last week, and I was actually really nervous because it's a long time since I did a case like that. But what I'm known for is unpacking the most difficult problems and being able to find solutions for people that work, but also mitigate in terms of the legal issues, so that people are not tied up in litigation for ages.
Yeah. I mean, it's so powerful when you gave that example of just transparently and vulnerably sharing, I'm actually really nervous about this.
Mm,
And here's why. It's
mm,
not sharing all of you didn't say, well, because when my mom said to me at 8, and I've always hung on to that story, well, that's good work to do. That's
yeah,
not what we share in the meeting, but you're still sharing this level of vulnerability that a lot of leaders are still afraid of.
yeah,
And I wonder, I know from my work, when we behave in that way, when we are more human and vulnerable in appropriate boundaries, we actually produce better work. And you just said, I rarely litigate, I help them solve the legal problems, but you're approaching it in this very human centered, present way. But so many systems reward productivity over this effectiveness.
yeah.
How do you help leaders start to value reflection, slowing down, mindfulness, and manage that feeling of pressure and irresponsibility? I'm supposed to be doing this thing. This is extra. How do leaders learn how to value that reflection
Mm.
piece?
Well, the most stressful thing about leaders' jobs is managing people.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And what your headline, the creating positive culture with complex people.
Mhm.
It's absolutely the case. The problem is that the complex people include the leaders.
Absolutely. I say in my keynote bio, managing hardest of all herself.
Yes,
Me.
100%. So as long as you're recognizing that you are conscious about some of your shortcomings and some of the things that you struggle with, I think that's the first place people need to start. Where is it that I am finding my most difficult things that I do? And most people will say it's managing people, it's managing situations, it's being able to. People are fearful, I think, of actually addressing problems, so they try everything else. they try
Oh my
ignoring,
gosh.
they try addressing things, and so, if I say that it's too subjective and people are going to get angry, I don't want that. Healthy conflict is necessary. Healthy conflict is the only way to move through
Yes.
situations and get to
Yes.
a better place. And I can tell you, I say this to people all the time, that every relationship that you ever have a conflict with in any way and you resolve it, but genuinely resolve it, come to a place where you are, even if you don't agree, where there's a genuine understanding, it always gets better. Every single relationship,
Absolutely.
it doesn't matter who you're with. It can be your partner, kids, work colleagues, friends, whoever, grandchildren, whoever,
Yeah.
every.
Absolutely. One of the things when I started working with leaders as a speaker, my very first topic was conflict resolution and the power of conflict. And in fact, my TEDx is called Great Relationships Need Conflict, because all of the research says that if you avoid conflict, that is when the relationship starts to end. And so if you avoid conflict, you manufacture fake peace, and that just doesn't last. We can't do it. But that avoidance, I think you're right, is the fear. Like there's an emotional avoidance when as a recovering conflict avoider, full on, just reframe it. It's fine.
I can
It's
do it for other
fine.
people, but I can't
Yeah.
do it for myself. I found,
Mhm.
because I think as mothers and as women, we are always trying to keep the peace,
Mhm.
with
And
our,
we're taught to be nice.
yeah,
Mhm.
but with our own mothers, with, our parents, with our friends, you
Mhm.
don't want to be seen as that person that's creating the conflict and being the problem, because we are very heavily criticized, women, if we come as a problem. All of a
Mhm.
sudden Karen's a problem now because she's raised something and we're uncomfortable about it. But
Absolutely.
it's the confidence to bring up those things too, in a way that the one thing that changed for me in terms of in my entire way of thinking about any of these work problems or any of these things was taking away the worry of the outcome.
Mm. Say
So
more.
so when you look at something and you say, this is the outcome I want, if you don't have any idea what the outcome is going to be, you have an idea of what you would like it to be. But
Mhm.
if you just take away the stress of the outcome and come with all of the things I talked about, the honesty, act with integrity.
Yeah.
Someone's triggered you and they say something to you and you think, oh, hang on a minute, you've gone way too far now. Come with curiosity.
Mm.
Okay, you appear to be angry. What you just said actually really, it hit me, right? Let's
Mhm.
go there. Let's talk about that. What
Yeah.
was that about? Why did you feel the need to say that?
Yeah.
And come with curiosity. And that really unnerves people in terms of,
Mhm.
oh, hang on a minute. I expected her, because a lot of people, when they're in conflict, will come at you, especially in legal problems, and
Yeah.
be as angry as they possibly can be because they want a reaction. Because
Mhm.
there's fear there. There's they want a reaction, in that I want you to go away. So when people are angry with you, I saw the other night we were camping with my kids and my grandkids, and we were a bit loud and we were having a bit of music and having, a bit of a laugh. And this man just turned up at our campsite and was yelling at us, like randomly, just yelling at us, and I just observed him. Once upon a time, there would have been a fear, and there probably would have been a bit of anger, and I probably would have gone, "Listen, get out of here, dickhead," But I didn't. I didn't do any of that. I just looked at him and I thought, "Wow, what is he so afraid of? He's coming at us in an angry way, so he'll shut us down so that we don't do anything." That's where he's coming from, and it's really interesting when you understand human behavior and you don't take it personally, when you observe people in the way that they are coming, whatever they're bringing. Something I've noticed about a lot of women, and I've stopped doing it, is when you say something that makes you uncomfortable, a lot of women giggle at the end.
Oh,
have you noticed that?
Until a leader said to me, "You are undermining your authority when you giggle after you give directions." I was an assistant head of school.
Yeah.
And I was doing it. Yeah. I've had to work at it.
It's next level. When you're conscious of it, but you realize that it's a way of trying to disarm people.
Absolutely.
Because you're uncomfortable with what you're saying.
Exactly. And I was afraid because I was a younger leader.
Yes.
Yeah. Once I uncovered all of that, it was even, I think, to your point about helping people dig deeper and understanding, once I uncovered that I was giggling and laughing because I was uncomfortable, because I was leading people who had more experience than I did in the classroom, even though I was their leader and directing them in this way. Once I discovered that that was the problem, I could deal with that. I didn't have to think so much about don't giggle after you say this. It was more about understanding the deeper. Right. And I had some awareness of the giggle, and I had like a system with my leader. He'd be like, "Hey, like, oh, I'm doing it." Cause sometimes it's unconscious, but once I dug deeper, it starts to happen. And I think that's what we're talking about. When we're uncomfortable, we have some behaviors that undermine us and aren't really helpful to us as leaders.
No, but it's disarming. So what you're trying to do, Lauren, when people start to notice it, you'll start to notice it in other people. But you're trying to disarm a situation by saying something that you're uncomfortable about. But it was interesting. I had a very difficult interaction with a team, and it was a small team. I was asked to come in and do positive communication. We did some unpacking of personality profiles and learning to work together and things like that. And it was quite interesting because the two people in the group, there's only 8, I think, out of 2 of them, everything I said, they were very aggressive. And you're just trying to put us in a box, and this is all very subjective, and what would you need to do that for? And it became quite aggressive towards the end. And it was quite interesting because not only did the most aggressive woman in the group pull me aside at the end, she attempted to sit next to me to have lunch with me because we all had lunch together. She sat next to me, and I wasn't cool towards her. I just had my lunch and I asked her some questions and then said, "Oh, look, I'm going to go and speak to these other people over here to see how they went with her." She then came again. There was an element of people pleasing in her that she felt because she had stepped over the mark and was very rude, instead of apologizing,
right, addressing the actual issue,
acknowledging her choices, her behavior, she was trying to in some way ingratiate me to like her, even though her behavior was really not okay. And she had actually tried to completely derail my entire presentation and the entire training day. And so she approached me again, and interestingly, she had a complaint about the workplace and the way she was being treated and that kind of thing. And I sat and I listened, and I said, "Oh, okay, so this is what's happening, blah, blah." And I just went, "Can I make some observations about your behavior?"
Yeah.
And I just opened the door
Yes.
She was really shocked because of the way I delivered it. I said, I'm making observations. I'm not making any assumptions. I'm saying this is what I observed about you today.
Mhm.
This is how it affected me. And, what I'd hoped for the group was that we would have some cohesion, that there would be the whole point of what I was trying to do was to bring understanding and cohesion to the group and better ways of communication. I think the way what you demonstrated today was probably the opposite of that. And so I'm interested how that works for you in reality. How does this work in your life? Do you have problems in terms of engagement in your relationships? Do you find that you are aggressive at times and then try and make things okay instead of actually acknowledging the aggression? And it
Mhm.
was so interesting. Anyway, she said to her boss she'd had one more go to try and kind of derail me. She said to the manager after that, she said, "Oh, that Karen hates me."
Oh.
And it was really funny because I really love the reaction of the manager. She's actually from the US, and she rings me and she says, "Karen," she tells me you hate her. And I said, "No, I don't." Oh, well, if you think that I said that, then that's absolutely not the truth. I made some observations about her behaviour and asked her how it was working for her, and asked her to reflect on perhaps a better way, look at her personality profile, perhaps get some counselling or coaching. I think that would be great for her. Anyway, her entire way of dealing in the workplace has shifted since that conversation. One conversation.
Yeah.
And it was just, it's just one of those things, I guess. You need to be brave in those moments, and you need to
Yeah.
be curious. And, there's no harm in raising those things with people, because you know what, conflict is not, that can't be avoided all the time.
No.
Yeah.
No. One of the things that the story is so great at illustrating is that idea of pretending. It's almost pretending at problem solving.
Mhm.
I'm gonna try to do this, and I have a lot of compassion for myself and other people, because there's a humanity to that is the unhelpful part of our complex nature, because we've been trained a certain way. Again, back to that idea of being nice or coming at it this way, and if I handle my fear in this way, and sometimes it's rewarded. But coming in to address it and bringing clarity through observations, and here's what I noticed, here's the impact, here's how I felt, here's what I found. Those types of ways of giving feedback to people is not how people are taught to do it.
No.
Even though it's so much more effective to come at it, it's not coming at it. It is direct, but it is not, it's not hateful. It's not aggressive. It's just, it's the addressing the issue, not aggressively about the issue or passive aggressively. I wonder, what are some leadership behaviors that look like that? They might look strong on the outside, but it really signals a disconnection or a lack of integrity for a leader.
The biggest issue that I see is that people who are not well versed at conflict or are frightened of giving feedback often go into it with this. They have a lot of people have their notes all ready to go, and they have an agenda in terms of what an outcome looks like.
Right.
As I said to you before, get rid of the idea. Yes, you would like a positive outcome, but work through it with the individual at their own pace to be able to let them help. Because the thing is, if you don't like giving feedback, people don't like receiving it either, right? Even if it's challenging feedback, because, most of us are still operating on patterns that, I've got to be a good girl, or I've got to be the best, or if you give me something feedback, it's going to be really challenging for me to hear or to process, because my perception is that I've been doing everything that I can, even if my behavior is like that woman I was talking about before, even if my behavior is less than ideal, I'm doing everything that I can to be the best possible version of myself at work. I mean,
Mhm.
people are very unaware a lot of the time about the way that they affect people, other
Yeah.
people. They have no
Mhm.
clue, because they're quite often, as I said, operating on patterns. They've been like that for years. For example, so a leader will have this idea of outcome. I want this to get better. But you have to be inquisitive along the way. You have to ask them, because they've got to have buy-in in the
Yeah,
process. So,
absolutely.
you need to be able to take away the idea that there's what outcome that you want. To go in there with an inquisitive mind and allow people to say, even if it's the most frightening thing you've ever heard, as in, you don't listen to me, you favor other people, and there's all this blame, 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 blame. If there's 100 things that they say to you about the way, and when you did this and you refute your email the other day, and all of that kind of stuff they bring, don't be frightened of it. Just let it.
Mhm.
The thing is, if it takes you off track of the conversation and it's getting nasty, just ask them to reframe it.
Yeah.
You take out the you statements, or you never, or that. Can you reframe it, my statements, so that we can have a conversation that doesn't trigger me in terms of what the conversation that we're having. Because whilst you think you're doing all the things, I am too. I think I'm doing
Right.
all the things, and there was no bad intention here.
Mhm. Well, I think that general rule is not quite the right word, but general principle in life, the vast majority, and I wouldn't say everyone, but I would say the vast majority of people, everyone's doing the best they can, and
Absolutely.
everybody can do better. At the same time, both things are both true at the same time, and we don't get any better and continue to do the best we can when we aren't able to receive feedback, or we're not able to recognize for ourselves how we're hurting ourselves. And I think there's so much power in asking for the reframe. There's so much power in being willing to hear
Yeah.
the ways that it's not working for someone else,
Well,
because you
see,
don't know.
I spent a lot of years, and people will relate to this too, demonizing people
Mhm.
because I didn't like the way that they behaved or whatever it was. And so they would be, to me, they would be somehow lesser, or I would think that, that they were the worst person on the planet. And there would be
Mhm.
this whole kind of victim mentality around the way that I addressed. I mean, I'll give you an example. When I grew up, my dad was quite an angry person. He had frontal lobe damage from when he'd had a
Mm.
car when he was young, and his ability to reason, his ability to show demonstrative love, things like that, right, was limited because of his.
Mhm.
And as a child, you've got no clue.
No idea. Right.
So, I sort of grew up in that environment where I was used to dealing with problematic men. I was the oldest daughter.
Mm.
I had very little, felt like I had very little understanding. It was funny, I did some hypnotherapy many years ago, and I realized at 7 that I'd reached out for help, to get help from a teacher, from parents, whatever it was. I can't remember what the issue was. I was 7, for God's sake. But on that moment, I became the most independent person. I knew I couldn't rely on anybody. At 7, I'd
Mm.
made that decision. And so I found it very, very difficult over the years to A, ask for help, B, accept help, C,
Mhm.
because it was just so incredibly self-sufficient. And
Yeah.
it's me when I started doing law, and I went, the very first organization I worked for, the guy there the manager had been through 7 people in that role that I
Mm.
took. I was there for 4 years. He'd had 7 people in 7 years, and I stayed for 4 years. But I used all of the skills from my childhood, all of the understanding about people, all of the things that I'd learned. I was in my, my late 40s by this stage, and I realised that all of it was an absolute godsend in terms of, okay, I can handle this. I know how to deal with really difficult men. And what I did was, he would come in and he had this habit of just blowing up about stuff, same way as my dad used to do, just blow up. And I'd just sit there, take a big deep breath. Are you finished? I'd say, and
So
he'd go,
good.
he'd look at me, you can't speak to me like that. I said, look, just take it off, take all of that. Okay, what I'm getting from you is blah, blah, blah. Anyway, but my thoughts are, we can either address it or we can't, we don't have to, or this is the best way forward. And I'd take the emotion out of it and just go, okay, this is what we've got to do. And it was funny because as I said, I was the only person that worked there for 4 years, but I learned so much from that situation. Instead of becoming that old victim, demonizing him, doing all the things, I learned how to handle my own emotions, handle my own way of reacting to things, and back myself, and that's what I learned out of that moment. And, leaders, if you're talking about leaders that make mistakes, he made every possible mistake in the world, but I wasn't going to let him derail me. I had too much to do, way too much to learn. And, it's funny, I was the only person I would probably say in Australia, that learned this skill that he had. He's now passed away, actually. He's only in his 60s. He was a very angry person. He died of liver cancer. So, who you've heard about people that have liver problems. But, I was probably the only person in Australia that learned the skills that he had in terms of aged care. I worked in aged care, in enterprise agreement bargaining. And, that I still now, when I've got a really, really difficult problem in industrial relations, I light a candle, I say, listen, Jeff, you bastard, I need an answer.
Well, there's so much. It's not just like pretending it didn't happen or well at leasting it. You're like, here, or
have a drinking.
Exactly. I learned how to manage my own emotions. I learned, here's what I learned from this. I could see, I addressed the issues. So much of the problem in leadership often comes from not addressing it and doing what we've talked about the whole time, like dancing around it and avoiding it, even though it looks like problem solving sometimes. But that, back to the first point of being really present, that when you are present in that, you can see how this impacts you and also what you can learn from it and then address. And there's so much power in that as a leader. And when we stop trying to perform problem solving or perform leadership and really being who we are and being present with people, we start to not only bring better solutions, but having more compassion for ourselves and others just along the way. Oh, I want to keep talking to you so badly, but we really need to start to wrap up. And I have so many other questions for you, but I would love, if you are listening to this, I would really genuinely love to hear what this conversation stirred up with you. I loved Karen. I loved your stories. And if you're listening to Karen's stories or my stories, you identified with something or something challenged you, you're like, but wait, you've got that. I would love to hear about it. I love it when you share on LinkedIn or Instagram, tag Karen and me. If that feels too vulnerable, send me an email, Jen with 2 N's at jenwhitmer.com. You can DM me on Instagram and LinkedIn, and we're going to make sure you also know how to get with Karen. I'm going to give her that in a second.
That link will take you to my website where you can get any contact with me as well. Yeah.
Yes. And we just would really love to hear what you think of this, because there is so much power in addressing it and saying it out loud and identifying and clarifying that. So Karen, I would love for you to tell us for your website, but what are other ways people can continue to learn from you?
Yeah, so the 15-minute conversation is really any of the spectrum of stuff that we talked about today. I have two businesses, Ignite HR and Employment Law. But last year, what I did was join my other business, which is my passion project, which is Ignite Your Purpose. And
Mhm.
from that, I run retreats, corporate retreats. I do. I'm not a big fan of the speaking engagement, believe it or not. As a lawyer, isn't that funny? I mean,
Mhm.
there's no enough keynotes out there. No, look, I don't mind being on
I'll take
panels.
yours if you don't want them. It's
Yeah,
fine.
that's right. But no, like I love podcasts. I love to talk to people like Jen, and explore ideas and basically the LinkedIn. I'm quite active on LinkedIn and Facebook, and I don't do much on Insta, but yeah, I mean all the socials. But yeah, so I've been working with leaders in legal capacity, but also in that leadership space, in that coaching space for quite a while. So whatever you need, I'm here from that perspective.
Well,
Which
thank you so much for sharing your stories, for your vulnerability, for sharing your perspective. I think you have so much to offer. How we understand people. I think you said it multiple times. If you know how to understand people, and one of my goals in helping people have more joy at work, it begins with understanding yourself and then understanding other people. Then we develop the skills to do that with, and then crafting our experience and setting up our habits and systems to do that. And that's what the book is about. And I feel like your perspective on that is just such a compliment and amplifier to the work that I'm trying to do in the world. And so I so appreciate your time and bringing that to me today. So
that's
thank you.
It's such a
And
blessing. Thank you.
well, as you are listening, friend, I want to, I can't help but put my coach hat on. It happens every time, but I would love for you to think about, and I want to invite you into what's the one idea you want to try. Karen and I talked about a lot of things today in our conversation. And what's the one small practice, the one small idea or intentional shift that you would like to try? And I always want to bring back this idea of developing, cultivating joy. And the work that we do at Joyosity is not about becoming somebody new. It's about really staying connected to who you already are. And especially when things get hard, how do you develop a person and becoming that favorite self that you have and honoring yourself and other people? And so if this episode was helpful for that, or somebody, I don't want to totally deflect from your own work, but if you were thinking about, oh my gosh, this person is going through this, that person going through your mind, share this episode with them. And when you rate and subscribe, it helps other people find the show and helps us in the movement of continuing to spread joy and creating positive culture with complex people. So I'm so grateful for you as a listener. And when you do share the work, it really helps us spread joy in times that are difficult right now. And I'm so grateful for that. So again, thank you to Karen for being on the show today. I hope that you continue to go out and ignite people with purpose and passion. And I'm really grateful for you being here today.
Thank you so much, Jen.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody. We will see you on Joyosity next week. Bye.